What's up, Nubians? Welcome to techn00bians, part of the Geekish Network. This is your weekly deep dive into video games steeped in blackness. For those of you who don't know, techn00bians is a live stream podcast hosted by Black technology professionals, yours truly and the other folks here on the call. We discuss the what, where, and how you can get into this world of technology, specifically video games. With me today, we have our man with a million plans, Chuck.
What's up, everyone?
We have our producer, Sleuther, and deducer, Shanae.
Hey, folks.
And I guess we got Travis here, too. Travis.
Oh, hey.
Hey.
What up?
We're not interrupting you, right, Travis?
Good, Travis.
No, I'm
No more
good.
than usual.
Okay, welcome to the show.
Yeah.
And I'm your host, Cherie. We are techn00bians, and we're here every week to inspire, sustain, and nurture successful creative technologists in the pursuit of Black excellence and content development. So, all right, folks, you know the drill. We do news and a long topic. This week, for our long topic, we are talking about ethics in tech. Ethics and technology. This is going to be a spicy topic. I know there's a lot of stuff in the news around this lately. There's always news around ethics and tech. So I'm excited to have this conversation. But before, of course, we get into our long topic, we're going to kick things off with our gaming and tech news with our news segment, Techn00bians. All right. So starting us off, I have a little story here I just wanted to mention to folks, which is G4 is back. Do y'all remember G4?
Yeah, I remember.
Yes.
G4 TV?
Yes.
Way back.
I used to have a TV show on G4.
Oh, did you really?
I was producer of a TV show on G4. Yeah.
I did not know this.
Yep.
Oh,
Okay, you gotta tell me what TV
family
show.
in the house.
Yeah.
Yep. It was Street Fury.
Street Fury.
Yeah, I was part of the whip set. So there was two shows, the Street Fury and Formula D, and I was producer on both of them.
Interesting. I did not know that.
Mm-hmm.
Well, hey,
In Tokyo Pop. Mm-hmm.
Okay, I'm curious. What are your feelings about G4 coming back?
I'm okay with G4 coming back. I saw the lineup and I'm like, they trying to steal the Geekish Network shine. They're not gonna be able to do it. They ain't got no flavor.
No, they can't do it.
They ain't got no flavor. But not. I mean, my thing is Olivia Munn is not coming back. So that goes 45% of their viewing population is not coming back.
Well, I mean, that was actually what I thought was interesting about them coming back, because it feels like rather than it kind of come, at least just from what I've seen, with like the lineup and everything like that, rather than it coming back and being like, okay, we're going to do something that's new and fresh and like responding to the times, it kind of feels like they did a pause and they just like transported the old, network to now. It's like they're going to have X-Play again. They're going to have Attack of the Show again. They're going to have the same host, Adam Sessler.
Adam Sessler's back. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, no shade on them or anything like that, but like, I'm just kind of like, what are we going to do that's going to feel new and fresh? Because like
they have a puppet show.
But
awesome.
Wait, I mean, do we need them to do something that's quote unquote new and fresh? I think maybe the situation with G4 is that it was ahead of its time, right? And now all those things that they sort of opined about that they didn't have are democratized now to the point where we can do G4.
Yes. Yeah.
I think it's interesting. And I wish them the best of luck. I mean, I just remember when G4 came on, and it was just another sign that I've been seeing, and that was cool.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I was gonna say they're gonna have a lot of difficulty. That space is crowded now. They did have the space to themselves. Now that space is really crowded.
That's what I'm interested in, really. When you're talking about the new and fresh thing, like that's what I'm interested in, because like you said, it's a very different landscape out there, and if they're providing just the same kind of content as 20 years ago, was it 20 years ago? I don't know how many years ago. It was a long time ago.
Yeah, that's
going to be really hard to just break through, because it's just like there's so much. The oxygen's already been sucked out of like the ecosystem, essentially. Yep. My other thing is too, like, I still go back to the point that I'm like, I think we're terrible in the industry at teaching people how games are made. That said, there's a lot more access and information about how games are made. So I'm really hoping that there's, I often say like Game Developer, which is formerly Gama Sutra, is one of the few like media outlets out there that really focuses on the science of game development. I'm really hoping that there's some of that on G4 and it's not just, endless streams of Fortnite or something.
Yeah, I think that's an angle where they could feel fresh, right? It could be less around like just enthusiast press or whatever.
Yeah,
more
they have an opportunity to make it a little bit more, make something that we would watch too, right? Like as game developers, not just as gamers. That would be kind of rad. Or at least one show. Give me one show.
You think they're really going to do that?
No, I don't.
No, but I can ask. It's not on the air yet.
We could do that though. We're doing that. We're doing
Hey,
that.
put us on G4.
Maybe they shouldn't do that. We don't want the competition. It's fine.
Yeah, we're doing
it's a
that.
Geekish Network on G4. You pitch it, Chuck.
No, G4 on the Geekish Network. Yeah.
Yeah. Flip it, twist it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right.
Because they bring in an X-Play and the Dungeons and Dragons series, and we have a Critical Role. There's a lot of competition in the space, and people are quite satisfied with what's out there. MKB, Marquisi's out there. You have Unbox Therapy. There's a lot of shows that will give G4 a run for its money. They come with the same format that they had before. That's
the thing. Like, and so I think I was just surprised with the release when they're talking about, hey, we actually really coming now. I know we've been hyping it for like a year. They actually have like a date. It's like mid-November where they're like, we're actually going to be starting now.
Oh, it's soon.
Yeah. But everything that, at least from the press releases that I saw, like what they announced was like things that maybe they're trying to play on the nostalgia, of folks who knew G4 back in the day. But I was like, I want to just see like some new interesting, because they're also putting like Sasuke on there, the like Ninja Warrior before America came and bastardized the name. Ninja Warrior. They're putting Sasuke on there, and I'm like, that's still old school, because I remember.
That's interesting because that was sort of like the tail end of G4 as they were starting to transition into that. What network they turned into?
No original programming. They went
and they started putting like Sasuke. I think wrestling was on there for a bit.
Yeah. I think Spike Network or
Spike
something
Network.
like that.
Spike Network, yeah.
Right. That was when I felt like that was the tail end. Like that was sort of like their in their twilight. What felt like their twilight year or month, whatever.
Wow.
It's interesting to bring that back.
Yeah, I'm interested to see what they do, and if they create like a new space, and if they're able to kind of like flip the script a little bit. We'll see.
And they're talking about running the majority of their content on Twitch too.
Okay, all right. Hey,
so that's going to be even more interesting.
Yeah, you know what? I'm excited about it. I'd love to see like they bring some new content out and stuff too. It will be interesting. There's lots of room here, but like I said, it's hard to get oxygen. So
yeah.
Good luck. All right. Well, let's move on to the next story here. Shanae, you've got a story for us.
I do. So this little game called Metroid Dread. I don't know if you guys heard about it yet. I actually haven't started playing it yet, but I will start playing it soon. So there was some social media reports from various developers that said that they were not credited. They were not reported. Their names were not in the credits for the game, and so that sort of like cycled around the social medias for a while. It was confirmed. And it sort of it's creates a little bit of a dust up and stuff like that too, because this goes back to the conversation about what are the rules for crediting people? Like how much do you have to be involved in a game's development in order to get an official credit in the credits for it? Now, Mercury's team says that they were adhering to their credit rule, which is you have to work on the game for at least 25% of the game development. And I guess a few folks didn't work on it that long. They worked on it for like 8 months or something like that, which is not an insignificant amount of time, but wasn't 25% of the game development time. There was also a recent story about Ubisoft, something similar happening where people wound up getting special thanks credits instead of like credit under their disciplines. There's a lot of like feelings about credits in the game industry.
Yeah,
in general,
there's no unions.
I can tell you in general, I always tell people, one of my most hated parts of game development is collecting credits. I give everybody a credit. You want a credit? Here's a credit. Yes. Your dog wants a credit, put it in there. You got a credit. Yeah. I would rather do that than argue about credits. Honestly, life is too short to argue about credits. So what are you guys thinking about this? Are there any games you guys worked on that you didn't get credited for?
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
That you wish you
had. Absolutely. Yes. I mean, it's a thing, right? It's a thing because games take so long to actually make in the first place. And then in addition to that, if you get some great offer and you feel like maybe most of your work there is done, and you can transition, over to something else, and your work will live on. You should be credited for it. I mean, I know a friend of mine who's a developer, and he was working on Red Dead, and he was over at another company for 2 years. Before Red Dead even came out, and he said, my quests are like completely unchanged. Like no one changed anything, and I don't know if he got credit.
Yeah, I mean, this is the thing that's hard too, like because lots of companies, like there's no standard, like Chuck said, there are no unions in the industry like that, so there's no really standardized rule as to how you get credited, and like whether you get credited and how you get credited.
Yeah,
because both those things are very, very specific too. They tend to be decided by company by company. And this is an interesting one. Like the 25% rule. Like that's not uncommon to have it based on how much time you spent on the development of the game. But when we really think about it, like Travis said, games take a really long time to make. The last game I worked on, if it was 25% of the game development would have been 2.5 years or something like that.
That's what I was going to mention. When I worked on Sims 4, that thing was in development for 7 years, But 25% seems like a really high, it seems kind of high. When I was at EA, if I recall, it was something like 6 weeks or something to that effect, Now I will say at least 6 weeks is not that long in the life.
6 weeks or 6 months.
What if?
Well, I think it was 6 weeks, because we always had people kind of quibbling over stuff when they just gotten here, and it's just yeah. So I mean, at least that's not a huge contribution there. But we had games sometimes where we get from another studio that would ask our compliance team to look at it, and we'd be looking at it for for a couple of months, and we wouldn't get credited for it.
At a critical point in the game's development, which is it's trying to ship. So there's also that question of hey, you only worked on it for maybe 3 or 4 weeks, but your impact to that game's development was pretty critical.
That's like saying, as a producer, a game is not shipping, and I come in and I get it to a schedule where it can actually ship.
Yeah,
I don't get credit for that. I mean,
sorry, Chuck.
So I'm saying that's an issue. That's the problem, is if people contribute one idea, because there's been designers that actually change the design of a game with a great idea, and that game and that new mechanic they introduce is what sells the game and builds the game. Should they not get credit for that?
This is exactly why I don't get into the holy war about credits. I'm you want a credit? I gave you a credit.
Yes.
You get a credit. You get a credit. You get a credit.
Just give people credit.
And I know nobody wants to go back in and have to reopen the credit. Nobody, they always hate doing that. Having to go.
And God help you if your credits are not just a freaking JSON file or something like that. If someone decided to make some fancy credits and baked all the text in, that stuff's never getting changed.
I remember when I was at Sony, and I was just working on my game, and then all of a sudden someone comes into my office, and I'm like, "What's up?" And she's like, "Oh, I'm here to give you your credits." Right? And I'm like, what? First of all, who are you? Right? Second of all, how do you know what's in my game? Oh, you've used these departments, these people, and so on and so forth. And I'm just like, wow. Right? That's because it reminded me, and I get it, right? I do. Okay. But I got to tell you this quick story. When I was at Warner Brothers, I was setting up my office, right? So I'm in my office and I'm, putting things up, straightening out things, and I finally, take a picture, a movie poster that's framed, and I put it on the wall. And about 3 hours go by, a guy comes in and says, "Hey, I heard you put up a picture." And I'm like, "Yeah." And he said, "That's a union job." I'm like, "Okay." Right. And so he then takes my picture off of the wall, sets it down, and he says, "Is this where you want it?" And I'm like, "Well, that's where I put it." Right. He remeasures it. Okay. Gets it, I guess, superhumanly level. Okay. Puts it back on the wall and hands me a bill.
That's about right. That's about right.
So that's where
right.
that's like the extreme part of where unions will get you. But that's what it is.
Can I also comment about credits? That besides just like the question of whether someone gets in the credits or not, sometimes when you start talking about not just whether someone gets credited, but how they get credited, people start to lose their minds.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. There'll be like so many arguments about like, well, that person worked on it for like 3 weeks less than me. So why did their name go up to the credits first? Like, I don't want my name to be below theirs. I don't want my name to be beside theirs. I don't want my name to be on the same slide as theirs. If it's on the same slide, it needs to be at the exact same height. How people get credited. I had one studio head who wanted her title to be co-studio head and VP of product development and product management. And I'm like, that's 6 lines of text. Like, people just start losing their minds when you start talking about credits. And it's like, guys, like, I get it. Like, it's not that it's not important. It's just that it's not that important. Like, and I'm not trying to minimize it, especially like, I know I'm a little jaded. Well, I've been in the industry for like 20 years. I've gotten credits in lots and lots of games, but there's just also a thing called perspective as well. And we really shouldn't, we really need to sort of manage those sorts of things so that we can give people the credit that they're due, but also not lose our minds about this thing. Cause it's literally probably the grand scheme of like what we're trying to create for end users and stuff like that too. Like, I'm never worried about getting a credit. Cause if someone asks me what I did on a game, I will let them know. I'm like, hey, let me just walk you through with what my role was in the game. And the scars that I have for it.
The only problem is that you have studios that when we find, people go say they have credits for a game and we can't find their credits, we try to blackball them out of the industry. Yeah, there's been studio people malicious. They go to Giant Bomb to dictate that. Like, you went to a website? Yeah. You didn't call anybody at the studio? Like, why would I call somebody? I can go to Giant Bomb. Yeah, it's it's a website. It is fallible.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. And another thing that's interesting too is that there's lots of games that don't even have credits anymore. Yep. Right. Lots of mobile games don't do credits. There's like entire studios that, because it became like some kind of religious war every time they had to do credits, they just stopped doing them. And the
actually. Yeah. Well, not just that. A lot of people who are doing mobile games don't want to be identified because that stuff gets crazy. When you have whales who are paying tens of thousands of dollars and so on and so forth, and they look and they go, who is this lead designer? And they will track you down. I mean, because if they've got tens of thousands of dollars to spend on a mobile game, trust me, they can hire somebody to come find you.
They got time. They got time.
Yes.
And money.
Yes.
So speaking of, let's see. We have one more story here. Actually, we have 2 more stories, but let's get a story here. Chuck, you've got a story for us.
Yeah, I got a story for us. Sony now lets people line up to buy PS5s directly from them. So what they're saying is, hey, we know for the last 11 months you've been trying to get a PS5, and we've been letting the bots have them and sell them to you for upsell or triple the amount. We know we let that happen. Now what we're going to do, because we saw Best Buy do it, we're going to turn around. We're going to let you get in line as you have a PSN account. And you kind of get preferential treatment if you have a PS Plus account. We allow you to get in line. You sign up. We'll send you an email and you buy one. You're allowed to buy one. Both either the disc version or the digital version, but you're allowed to buy one. We had a heated debate on this in Geek Beast because I was thinking, what if I had never had a PS4? Because they want you to have a PSN account. You had to have it for a certain amount of time. Yeah. What if I didn't have a PS4 because I couldn't afford it, but I saved my money for the PS5, or I took my stimulus check and then kept it aside for the PS5 because that was an extra $1,200. I didn't expect to get in the panorama. So do I not qualify for that? They're like, oh, this is for the super fans, the whales that spend $10,000 on a mobile game because they're the ones in a PSN account that have a PS Plus account, that the PS Now account, and they purchase everything digitally. So we're going to allow them. I said, wouldn't those type of people already have one and they can re-up again to get another one?
Yeah. Well, I guess I kind of look at it as like, it's kind of like a loyalty.
Yeah, it's a loyalty thing. And I respect that. Yeah. But there's a lot of people that just probably couldn't afford a PS4.
There are.
They had a PS3 and they ran a PS3 the whole entire time.
If it makes people feel better, I like my PS5, but you ain't missing too much right now.
Dang, shots fired. Dang.
Nothing against it. I said, I like my PS. I have a PS5. I have a Switch. I have an Xbox Series X. My Xbox Series X. I don't remember the last time I booted it up. My PS5. I booted up because I was playing what?
Returnal.
Deathloop. Actually, I'm done with Returnal. Playing Deathloop and so like.
Are you done with Returnal?
I'm way done with Returnal. I realized it was stressing me out, and I'm like, I don't get stressed out.
We also played Resident Evil 7 on it, even though I know it's
played Resident Evil 7 as well too, right? But like I said, Resident Evil 7 was a PS4 game, right?
Like I get what they're doing. Yeah,
I do too. But
somebody's suffering. Somebody that just saved enough money, or this is their first console.
I don't know if suffering's the right word, Chuck. I mean,
that's a really I mean. Let's put it
in perspective of gamers suffering. It's gamers suffering.
Let's put it in perspective. Okay, if you have a PS3, okay, you're used to suffering by now.
Wow.
But what I'm saying is you skipped
you deserve it. You deserve
what I'm saying is you skipped a whole damn generation. Of PlayStation.
People have done that though.
You can wait another 6 months because you have waited more than 6 years.
But people have done that. Kids, family change, structures change.
It really,
of course they did.
Sucks that we can't. It really does. Like
it's sad that nobody can just buy one.
You just walk into a store
just
and
put it into the stores.
Yeah,
tell the stores they physically have to have them.
So you want people to get knocked upside the head instead, right? That's what
nobody's getting knocked upside the head coming out of Target on the Tuesday.
All right, I tell you what, you put some PS5s out on the floor and see whether or not people get knocked in the head.
I mean, Centel, he got his. He literally walked into Target and was like, "Is that a PS5?" They're like, "Yeah, we just got them in." He said, "Give me one of those." He put it in. He put it in his 11-year-old's hands. His 11-year-old walked out with the PS5 in his hand.
You're describing an edge case.
I don't think that's an edge case.
So here's what I'll say for it. Like, I mean, ultimately, like the fact that there's this huge shortage of PS5s, that's the biggest problem, everything like that with it. I'm not super surprised that they'll kind of go this like loyalty route or whatever. I mean, heck, when we would do that for like some of our, our like special releases on Sims, stuff like that. We would go and look and be like, who are our biggest Sims players? They get like a special entitlement, get early access to things, That's kind of the same thing where they're like, hey, these are the people who have stuck with us the longest. They've given us money when we did not deserve it. I didn't get a PS4.
Right. Yeah.
I skipped to the PS2, this PS4. Because I was like, I don't have $600 to give y'all.
Yeah, Nike does it too with the sneakers app too. Yeah. Where you buy sneakers, you come to our app every day. We'll give you preferential treatment in the lottery.
Yeah.
In the lottery, you got preferential treatment.
And the thing is, like you said, they've been basically impossible to get a hold of for more than a year. But I think part of that is because they were going the retail route. They were putting them into stores and people were gaming that. They're like, oh, I can only buy one. Well, I just came here with 5 of my friends and we all each bought one. And then they just all turn around and flip them. So they have to go to some kind of system where they can verify, at least try and at least close that loophole and close that internal that pipeline in by verifying who's actually getting one and saying, okay, I know who you are. Your PSN account is attached to this. You can put one PSN account per one PS5 per PSN account. So they're trying to basically they're trying to kind of close that off. I don't know if this is the best way to go about it or not.
All the bots, when they buy them from PlayStation, they'll have PSN accounts. In order to buy one now, you have to have a PSN account.
Listen,
but they can only buy one. They can only buy one.
But I have a bot.
They can only buy one. I mean, see, the thing about it is, it's like this thing costs more than a Furby, and you saw how people were about Furbies.
Or the Tickle Me Elmo.
Right, you will get
knocking each other
out.
Grandma's knocking each other in the head over a Tickle Me Elmo. Eddie Ruxpin, like all the runs on these things.
Yeah.
You have a pile of PS5s in the middle of the store.
They're not going to pile them up, but put them in the. Try to do both. Try to get it in the stores and here too, because people are going to game this too.
Retail employees have to deal with enough. They don't need to deal with like angry gamers who didn't get the PS5.
They deal with them anyway. Your store said they had a PS5 in here. Where's them effing PS5s?
But Chuck, you got to look at it this way, okay? If I have a PSN account, okay, and I've got history, Okay, I am a known factor for PlayStation.
Yes.
Okay, and
Absolutely.
I don't see any better way to reward loyalty than to give you, you can cut in line. You can cut in line because you've been in line, right?
Yes.
And I think that's fair.
I got in line in 2005.
Don't get me started on when I got in.
That's what I'm saying. Like it's kind of saying like PSN who played like PlayStation fans. You got in line back in the early 2000s.
But like, for example, what Best Buy is doing this, they have we're bringing the Gamer Club back. $200. We'll put you in line before everybody else. We'll give you access to buy one for the holiday.
Capitalism.
See, I don't care for the Best Buy's thing where it's like here. I mean, at least for a PlayStation, like I've already got a PS Plus account.
I mean, the Best Buy thing was a jewel in the early 2000s because it was like $200. We give you 20% off every game you buy. You telling somebody like me that I'm buying every game?
Pretty good.
Everything.
You know what I'm saying? I'm getting my money's worth. But now it's like $200. We'll let you buy a PS5.
But like I said, for anyone who hasn't gotten the PS5,
sorry,
yet, don't worry, you're not missing anything. You can wait additional months, and like, no, for real, like there's like 3 solid games that are PS5 exclusives out right now, maybe 5 or something like that. There's a handful, a very small handful and stuff. So like, really, there's great gameplay. Most of the gameplay experiences on PS5 are available on other platforms and stuff.
I want Atmos sound too.
Yeah,
but you'll be so you can. I'm saying just like patience. It'll hopefully soon be available, and then you'll be.
But it's a shiny new toy. They know how the shiny new toy works. We all know how the shiny new toy works. People when I bought the people have switches, and when I bought the LED switch after they have a switch, I ain't saying no names or nothing. People
I'm giving my switch to my dad. Okay.
Gave my switch to my dad. I do the same thing too. Like, I'm giving this iPad away. I'm giving this iPhone away.
It works for my purposes. It frees my.
It does.
So okay. So speaking of, I know we were talking about like you're not missing anything there with the PS5.
Yes.
Speaking of missing something, Travis, you've got a story for us.
Yeah, Madden is going to be missing something. Madden is going to be missing the Gruden, John himself. I'm I'm looking here on GameDeveloper.com, and and it says the short version is this: a veteran football player coach used homophobic and racist slurs to describe players and other coaches. NFL Commissioner Roger Goodell and the documents were unearthed in a lawsuit. So EA just decided that they were going to just remove Gruden from, the lineup and replace him with, I guess, a stunt double.
They did. They said it's gonna be reminding them, but they're taking him out. I said, why don't they make it a black gay coach, a black lesbian coach, like everything he talked about, make it everything he talks bad about. That's what I think they should do.
It's so sad.
So at what point, because this has to be the quickest form of cancel culture I've ever seen.
We're taking you out the game.
You're literally getting taken out of the game. Literally and figuratively, right?
And the consequence culture.
I'm not. Okay, I'm just gonna say it. I'm not okay with it.
Yeah,
I'm not okay with it.
It switches really fast because they did do the same thing to Kaepernick too. They pulled him out the game. They yanked him out quick.
Yeah, my thing is that like you said, this is consequences, right? Like no one has a right to be represented in the video game. And EA controls this property, and they can make a decision as to what they want to, like who they want to represent it and how they want it represented. We can disagree with that too, but they probably would have gotten just as much criticism if they left them in the game.
Yeah.
It's just one of these things where it feels like the fate of reality hangs in the balance of some of these decisions. And I know that you probably, it's sort of funny to to laugh about it, but at the same time, like the reason that I'm not into like most sports games, okay, right now is because they tend to lean more towards a simulation than arcade. And I grew up in an age where, well, first of all, you couldn't really simulate much of anything. I mean, it was just glowing lines. But so once you start getting to the point where you're simulating, what responsibility do you have to be as accurate as possible, right? And it bothers me. It bothers me because it's basically like if you're making a World War II game, right? Do you just say that meanie?
Today's culture probably say, I agree.
Wait, are you saying that meanie instead of Hitler? Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Oh, well, I mean, okay, so let's be clear, right? Like when people were making, like this is not a documentary game, right? Like there's always editorial decisions that get made all the time. When they determine like what the rating
of the Raiders is not a subjective opinion.
Let me finish. When they decide like who they're gonna give when they're giving ratings to players, somebody decides that, right? Like they have arguments about this kind of stuff all the time. So like, is it a realistic simulation? Yeah, kind of, but it's not a documentary. It's not like a historical record of like what happened in this game. There's probably players that get omitted. There's players that get like where someone's like, well, actually this player was a better player than this. Like those things happen. And I think that they have the discretion to decide whether or not they want to put someone in there or not. And did you hear what this guy said? I'm sorry. Here's the thing. Okay, I have to say this out. I have to say this out loud because when I heard about this story, I'm like, well, what did the guy say, right? Because not because because there's so much racism out there, and for some reason I was like, I expected to just see a couple N-words or something. No, this dude wrote in an email. Dumb Boris Smith, which is not his name. Dumb Boris Smith has lips the size of Michelin tires. And I said, get that dude out of this game.
All right. Now I just want to propose a question to you, and then I'll be quiet. Okay. I really will.
Wait, how long will the quiet last?
I don't know yet.
Okay. All right.
No promises. All right. Say you say something monumentally ignorant. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I get to go back and remove you from credits from your game?
If it's a game that's live and current. I mean, so here's my thing. Like, technically the guy resigned. Isn't it more accurate that he's not in the game now?
Oh, they're just maintaining this.
I think they should pull him out the game because he did resign too. I think he left the team. But it's not like 400,000 emails are floating out there. Boy, people are gonna be burning on this one because that one man didn't write 400,000 emails.
Those emails all had a recipient too.
They did, and they passed around. Apparently, there's like.
What this really shows, though, it really just shows like that there's like we're not talking like this oftentimes results in like one person getting punished for it. But like I said, all those emails had a recipient. They all probably had a thread. Like there's probably multiple people in the recipient line, the 2 line, and the CC line. So what this is really revealing, once again, is a culture that tolerates this. This was what 10 years ago or something like this. A while ago, right? So this was like I know these consequences are coming due now. But people knew that he had these bad opinions and this like said this terrible stuff in the email record a decade ago, right?
I'm not arguing whether or not Gruden should have resigned or whether or not he should have been fired or whether or not he's a nice guy or whether or not he can make the best bacon and egg sandwich you've ever had. That's not really my question here. Mm-hmm. Okay. Or really my assertion. My assertion is that when you start modeling, simulating things, at what point do you owe your the customer or the end user the truth?
You don't owe them anything unless you're calling this a documentary. It's a video game, man. Like honestly, for real. Like, it's the fact that I press the X button. I don't press the X button in real life to throw a football. Like, there's always going to be some level of translation, some level of distance, and some level of editorial decisions that get made all throughout game development. This was a PR decision where they said, "Hey, this guy resigned. We can couch it under realism, but also, do we really want to highlight like this person who's in the news saying really crappy things? Our game is coming out, like this is their decision." Is this a scary world that we live in? Maybe some people see it as being scary because maybe they shouldn't put their racism into email.
That's not just a phone call. Make sure there's no one recording. Well, I don't know if you make sure no one's recording anymore.
Also worth noting, he wasn't just racist. He was racist. He was sexist. I think there was some homophobia.
He was homophobic and misogynist.
All of them.
Once again, that has absolutely nothing to do with what I'm saying. I'm saying
my empathy for different people.
Okay, so
my empathy, to be clear, my empathy isn't for him. Okay. My empathy, or, my assertion is, to what degree do you owe the truth or reality when you are trying to simulate something? That is it. Okay. And I can go on, but I'm sure we'll get to it.
Yeah. This is actually a good segue into our long topic, right?
Yeah.
We're talking about ethics in tech. Right. And we're talking about things like who defines what the ethics are, right? And who makes those decisions, and how does this stuff get made, right? This is obviously, it's not that it's just been in the news. I know that it's been in the news more lately, but it's always kind of a constant issue, particularly as, companies are innovating and we're relying more on algorithms. We're relying more on automation, things like that. And just innovating and trying to solve new problems, like how do we go about making sure that we are solving them in an ethical fashion, a way that actually takes real human needs and the human condition into account, right? So this is a good place for us to kind of move into this discussion here, because we are talking about this, who defines this, right? So I guess I just want to start off with defining what ethics in technology means. And seeing if someone has what are people's thoughts around this? What is your description of being of having technical ethics?
Well, we can always go back to that. I was gonna say we can always back to that Jurassic Park quote that I think it was Travis or Leon. I think it was Leon. I think it was Leon that always says it, which is, we spent so much time trying to decide if we could do it. We didn't ask if we should do it or something like that. Like how we could do it, whether we should do it, whatever. I can't remember.
We could,
whether we should. Yeah, that's the. I'm mucking up the quote, but you guys get the point. Go back and watch Jurassic Park. Jeff Goldblum says it better than I did. But it kind of is that question, right? It is not just asking the question of how we do a thing, but whether we should do a thing. Like who can be impacted by the thing that we do? How can the thing that we're creating or developing, or designing, how can it be used to hurt people? Like asking that question in a really earnest way, and then making sure that you're also taking that into account during your design development period, during the design development, not afterwards when the bad PR comes.
Travis, what do you got?
So much. Making a massively multiplayer game. Mm-hmm. When you make a massively multiplayer game, it's different from making any other game that you've ever made, because you're under constant attack by your user base constantly. They are trying to thwart you in ways that are just brilliant in how they execute, how they want to cause mayhem. That's taxing.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And a lot of times you have to lessen your game experience just because it can be manipulated in other ways that you really don't realize until you're actually up and running. Right. We are in the middle of the biggest conflagration of this that I have ever seen, and it is called the internet. Right. There's so much data that is just being exchanged and played with and altered, how do you know what you're getting is the truth, right? And so if you take my example that I just gave you with Matt and their responsibility to tell you who was there, who was doing what, right? What if Google had that attitude as well, right? Where they can just say, oh, that person's not good or whatever. So you know what we're going to do? We're going to take those results from our search and put them on the 8th page and not the first page, right? And so I'm just saying this can easily get to that point, right? And if we don't have a way of checking ourselves technologically about the truth, we're going to lose it really fast.
Yeah. And in fact, what you just mentioned there's a law right now, I can't think of the name of it, but it's basically to do that, to stop tech companies from, like, for instance, for instance, like if Google, like if you get search results, it's to stop like Google from prioritizing all, like, you know, certain search results over other ones, and doing things that could potentially, like, you know, stifle competition. Right.
Yeah. You literally do that. Yeah.
Chuck, how would you define this?
Similar to Travis. I find this whole thing very, very interesting because it is the search for truth and who's truth and who controls that truth. Yeah. That's the most important thing. I sat there and watched the story. There's a YouTuber named Jenna Marbles, right? And she self-canceled herself. And what happened was they said she was doing videos in blackface, but in reality, she went to Comic-Con, wore a wig, and she happened to take her wig off during one of the videos, and it showed her tan line. And so people were like, oh, she was in blackface. From like 3 years ago, she was in blackface. Mm-hmm. And so they came for her.
Yeah.
And through the stress, she's like, just because of people were hurt by me, I'm going to cancel myself. Mm-hmm. And I was like, first of all, you should have corrected everybody. I was like, I took a wig off and I had a tan line. Uh-huh. And that happens when you're pasty white and you go out in the sun in the middle of July in San Diego. That's what happens. Mm-hmm. But instead, she was like, people were hurt. And since I'm a big proponent of cancel culture, I'm going to cancel myself because people were hurt. Mm-hmm. And it's like, where does that stop?
Yeah, I mean, so
she was like, their truth was they were offended because they saw me with white skin and brown skin, and mm-hmm. It's like, what?
Yeah, I'm not sure how cancel culture, which I don't think is really a thing, by the way.
It isn't. It's just people trolling, saying, get rid of this person, get rid of this person. They badger that person.
No, I understand what the definition.
Uh-huh. What they really do. What it really is.
But everyone who's been canceled is still multi-million-dollar people. So, and they're like, I have no platform, that they say on like every news station, every morning show. But I think that I think that this is it's an interesting thing because we've seen like really common examples of this happening in tech, where new technology is developed and mm-hmm. Or new things are designed, and they sort of just misunderstand the human condition, I guess. Like the one I always go to is like an example is, if anyone remembers Tay, which I think was like 2017 or something like that, Microsoft released a Twitter bot named Tay, and it was like, okay, this Twitter bot's like going to be a great learning AI, and it's just going to learn from the people around it. And of course, within 24 hours, the people around it turned Tay into a full-blown Nazi. Like Tay was repeating like Mein Kampf and all kinds of horrible stuff. And I just looked at it, I'm like, how was this not predictable from a number of reasons? Understanding Twitter as a platform, understanding humans, understanding when you tell someone, hey, you can't break this, and they're immediately going to try and break it. That's what Travis was talking about. They're immediately going to go in there and try and break mm-hmm. it. Like it was interesting to see that like happen in real time. And then also just again, open up so many questions of like, okay, if a company that is and developers that are as talented and thoughtful as these folks still missed this giant gaping obvious hole of the path that this learning AI was going to take. Yeah. Like what, I don't know. I don't want to say what hope is there for the rest of us, but it's a lesson for the rest of us, I guess.
Yeah.
We're not ready. We're not ready Okay, we're just not. Okay, I mean, this is how I look at it.
Humanity, you mean, or what?
Yeah, because and the reason I say that is because you have all these different ages, right? You had Stone Age, you had the Bronze Age, for example, right? And then you had this age of automation and so on and so forth. In every one of these ages, there was a new sort of titan or a new successor or someone who controlled things, right? And we're in an information age.
Yeah.
Okay. We're in an information age, and what we're doing is not only are these corporations gotten to the point where they can take this stuff and monetize it in more ways than you can possibly imagine. Mm-hmm. But we're now able to profile you and get you to act in a certain way just because we're so gullible as humans, right? And once we've done that, once we've unlocked how to control behavior, okay, not completely, but enough, okay, we have to take a good, long, hard look at what this is doing to us as a species. Okay. And figure out a way to save us from ourselves, because I'm telling you, it's going to get worse before it gets better.
We're not just in the age of information. We're in the age of trolling, and it's trolling at such a high level. Like the whole idea of Texas, they passed the bill. Like you have to offer opposing views to the Holocaust. You can't say it was all bad. There was good parts of the Holocaust, and you have to talk about those in schools. Then they look at the critical race people. It's like, isn't this what you wanted? Mm-hmm. This is what you wanted. This is what you wanted, right? You want us to tell you that slavery is bad. So if you say slavery is all the way bad, we got to talk about the good parts of the Holocaust. And it's like, what?
Yeah, it's so disingenuous.
But that's humans, right? I mean, that's disingenuous humans carve the future.
At least American humans.
No, this is everywhere.
Yeah.
I mean, the Taliban is notoriously known for it.
I'm not saying it's not. I'm not saying it's other places, but at least those examples of our that goes to like.
Yeah, we just do it in word. A lot of places do it with war. They do it with force.
Yeah,
we do it with words.
Yeah, we talk about we're in the age of information, and we're also so much in the age of misinformation right now.
Yes,
that's where I think we are right now.
It's like what you were just saying, Travis, right? I mean, and we've seen everybody has had probably the experience where you're talking about something and then suddenly start getting ads that are about whatever the thing you were talking about. Like, some random, like I said, I had at work, I wasn't even talking about it. It was like my coworker was talking about, like, he's like, he cuts hair on the side. And so he was talking about like getting one of those like mirrors that's behind you or whatever, so that he could like cut his own hair. There was some crazy thing or whatever he's talking about. And like, seriously, 5 minutes later, I suddenly start getting like ads for this.
Absolutely.
And I was like, I didn't even know what this thing was,
Well, we have a device that's always listening. It's designed to listen. Exactly. That's what it's good at.
And in fact, some of us have multiple devices. I got my Google Home here. Yeah. I had to unplug my Alexa because she kept like responding to the TV ads. It's like that. But then, of course, I got Siri as well. So I mean, here's the thing where I think ethics comes into it, right? Because I feel like that is a useful thing for people, right? Like, it's useful to me for me to sometimes get ads that are actually catered to something that I want. Mm-hmm. It's something that I would get. But I know that lots of times companies are very like, they want to be very, talk out of both sides of their mouth about this, right? And they don't want to necessarily reveal how much data they have on people, what data they have on people. And so like oftentimes they're being a little bit disingenuous and a little dishonest, I'll say sometimes, about like what they're doing with that data and how they're serving up these ads to you. That being said, I was like, lots of times if people actually just understood what their data was being used for, some of them might buy into that. Like it's useful to me, like I said, to have ads. Like when I was one time talking with somebody about like something with, some thermoses or whatever. And then I started getting ads for a thermos. It was a Hello Kitty branded thermos. And I was like, I think I need this.
and see, that's you see, Sheree, so you're pointing out like, the great side about big data, right? And the thing about it is like a firearm, or a machete, they're tools. Mm-hmm. You can use them to feed your family, or you could use them to do some pretty grisly, things as well, and I just don't know if we know what we have in our hands. Yeah. Right? Like, is it a shotgun? Is it a tactical nuclear weapon? We don't know. And unfortunately, usually we find out just how harmful these things are on the other side of trauma, right? Yeah. Is when it happens, when someone has that great idea, that causes just a metric crap ton of damage. And we go, oh my God, we didn't think of it that way.
You know what the other thing is? That's a really good point, Travis. You know what the other thing is too? Not only do we not know how to control this massive thing that we've created, but also once we do identify that, that thing was dangerous, or that thing actually did a lot of harm, we don't yet know how to make up for that. We still don't know how to correct it afterwards, right?
Put that genie back in the bottle, right? Yeah.
Yeah. Like we often, like, I'm on Twitter all the time. It's like that too. And people often joke, we talk about Twitter being like this horrible cesspool or this website. You just need to get off this website. Right. And we know about how Twitter can be, how like all these types of social media that allow people to like speak one to many, how it can be used for used in really negative ways, right? Used to harass people, used to abuse people, that kind of stuff. And yet I still don't see a good way of, or any good way that's any sort of response that's been like collective response coming from Twitter support or something like that as to how to fix that. Yeah. The other good example we can talk about for video games too was is Xbox Live, right? Yeah. I don't know what the Xbox Live community is like now, because I can tell you, I stopped using Xbox Live with anyone besides like close friends 10 years ago, because the community was not fun. Like, it was like you'd wind up getting matched up with a rando, and then they'd drop a couple slurs, whether they were racial slurs or gender slurs. Either one sucks for me. And I'm like, why am I playing this game? Like, I make these games. Why am I playing this game with a rando? I'm here to like enjoy myself, and I'm getting cursed out by some random person who, once again, people will say, oh, it's a bunch of 13-year-olds. I'm like, no, this guy is 35. Yeah. He has 2 kids. Wow. He has a 401k. He's like, he's got a mortgage, and he's cursing me out. Right. So and just like one last point, it's like, so as I understand it, like, I'm sure that the enforcement and stuff like that for a lot of these platforms has for Xbox specifically has changed in the last 10 years. But I left the ecosystem 10 years ago, and no one has tried to get me back because of what my experience was there. Yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
I bring up this point, and like when we're, if you grew up in the South, right? As I have, as a few of us have, and you meet someone or you get close to someone, you say, hi, how's it going? Right. And when you don't, people say, oh, you don't speak. Right. Like, and it's a byproduct of you being spaced out, and then, hey, you're alive, or someone to say, hey, how you doing? Right. So that was Southern, sort of, how you behaved in a social construct, so to speak. Now, I realized that when I moved to New York, it wasn't that way. Okay. And it wasn't that way because everybody was so close together already that, the hi, how you doing was sort of kind of assumed. Hey, how you doing? Right. The internet makes that worse, okay? Because we're that close to one another. No, we're that close to one another, right? And I just don't know whether or not we were made to be that close to one another, right?
Would you be close to me in real life?
Yeah. Well, what I'm saying is, what I'm saying is like, we really haven't invented these new rules for living this close together, okay? And we need them.
The internet gives me no personal bubble.
Right. Like we need them badly. And the problem is that, when we start talking about things like where we start talking about how, because I think our major export right now is outrage. Right. And it's because we live in this environment now where everyone's all up on one another. Mm-hmm. Right. And when you say one thing, it gets amplified into eternity. Right. Yeah. And then all of a sudden, now you're in this situation that no one before in history has had to do. And it's difficult.
let's talk about where the outrage comes from. The outrage comes from mostly because the rules that are actually instituted aren't made by the people that are outraged. They're made by the people that are actually making the comments, or people that are close to the people making all the comments or doing the injustice. It wasn't a bunch of black people that instituted the civil rights bill and the rules and the laws that came after it. It wasn't black people making those. We would have made them completely different. We would have done a lot of different things. Mm-hmm. It was white people thinking they're doing us a solid, that were doing really their cousin a solid. I know my cousin's a little outrageous, but I can't punish him, but I'm going to make it a little bit easier for you where you don't have to deal with him as much. You know, and that's what it is. And I think that's part of the problem. Like we talk about ethics and technology, we have to think about, we need the people that are actually being oppressed by it to be making the rules and laws to protect themselves, because they have the best perspective.
Yeah. And actually, you know, that was one of the last things I want to just throw out here as a question for folks, because one quick thing I said, because I thought this was a good kind of definition around, like, you know, technological justice, which really is kind of around ethics and technology. But I just want to mention this. Simon Trace, he's like the former CEO of Practical Action, and they're a national charity that like provides solutions around like agriculture, waste and water management, stuff like that. And he defined it as the right of people to decide, choose, and use technologies that assist them in leading the kind of life they value without compromising the ability of others and future generations to do the same. Yep. Which I thought that was a good definition of.
Twitter's out. That's the case.
Well, I mean, here's the thing, right? Like, I mean, I think so much of the time, companies, we are focused on like, well, we want to innovate, we want to disrupt, we want to create this, you know, this new thing. But we don't necessarily take a look at, well, how can this be used for evil? Just like Travis was saying, we don't look at that until like you're on the other side of trauma, or until you're at the congressional hearing. we don't look at those things.
Also trauma.
Yeah, also trauma. I'm just wondering, why do companies ignore it? Like, I mean, we've seen so many examples of this. Why do companies ignore ethics in general? I think it's going to have to be our last question, but just want to throw that out to the group.
Because it's expensive. Because it's more
expensive to do it upstream.
Well, you know, it depends on depends on what you value and stuff like that too, right? Because like, simply put, like, you know, there are a lot of companies, especially in the startup arena. Like we're like, most of us are Bay Area based, so there's tons of startups up here trying to disrupt all kinds of stuff, right? And so oftentimes the sort of ethical considerations are seen as something that gets in the way. It seems like it's a restriction, you know, to like creative ideation. And so they just look at it as something like, no, we want to ideate without bounds, because, you know, if we have this restriction on us, then that means that we won't find the most creative solution. We won't find the most creative thing to solve, and someone else will outcreate for us, right? Like, they're not worrying about ethics. If we worry about ethics, we're artificially limiting ourselves, and that means that we're not competitive in the space. I think that's the wrong way to think about it, because ultimately, like I said, you're going to have to think about this at some point. It's just whether or not you think about it during your ideation and design and development phase, or you think about it with your PR team and your rapid response team who's trying to respond afterwards, and you have to like do some like fast follows to try and fix whatever it was you broke. But I think that the people, they don't understand or they don't really value that sort of creativity and those sort of restrictions. Because like, honestly, some of the best games and the best ideative sessions I've been a part of throughout my career is when we have folks ideate within bounds, specifically, because like unbridled ideation, you think to yourself, oh, I've just given my designers like all the room in the world to think about something. And it's like, no, sometimes if you say, hey, here's some artificial restrictions right here, artificial or real restrictions, think about whatever creative thing you could solve within this box. I've gotten some amazing creative ideas when you have restrictions to work within. Yeah. So I think it's also, maybe it's just a fundamental misunderstanding, I think, of how creativity works.
I think that you have to let society decide. You really do. And these technological, you know, constructs that we're building at their core, they're tools. Okay. It's a hammer. Okay. Now, a hammer can build you the best table you've ever had, or you can use it to murder people. Okay. And you have to, if you make hammers, you need to dedicate yourself to making the best hammer that you can possibly make, and then give people, the ability to actually determine whether or not you're using it correctly or not.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you're gonna stifle creativity. You're gonna stifle expression. You're gonna stifle, all the good that can ever be done. Okay. Yeah. And so just build the best tool you can. And you're just gonna have to let society figure it out.
All right, folks, this has been an awesome conversation. I really want to be able to come back to this because there's so much more I think we can talk about this. Honestly, I could talk about this for forever. But I thank you for the conversation. I do want to give a shout out to Digital Click for all the creative they provide us for each and every show. If you want to learn more about techn00bians, you can hit up our website, techn00bians.com. That's techn00bians.com. Please follow us here on Twitch. And if you like our vibe,
and we know
you do.
And if you want to learn more about game development and everything geek, please consider subscribing to our channel. Follow us on socials. We are on every major platform, so please give the Geekish Network a follow. And if you're ever wondering what else geek we're talking about, check out the schedule of shows on TGN here on our Twitch page. So anyways, that's it for now, folks. Thank you so much for watching, and we will see you all next week. Bye, everyone.